And
Happy
it's
Friday the 13th.
exactly, I was going to say the same thing. Friday the 13th during a Halloween month, it doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just get into it. Although I was wondering, just curious, what's the weather like in the Netherlands?
Well, it's definitely becoming autumn right now. It's very windy and wet and rainy.
Yeah.
Other than that, pretty temperate. We didn't really have any big winters here recently, so no, not a lot of snow and stuff like that. And it used to be like that when I was a kid, so I kind of miss it.
Yeah.
Would be nice now that I have my own kid to be able to build a snowman or throw snow at each other and stuff like that.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
Exciting.
It's been
Um,
2.5 years, so.
Actually, here in Ontario, it's actually been warmer winters too. Like we had snow last weekend, but it didn't last. And then
Mm.
the winters are just milder for sure. A lot of the time.
Certainly something happening, right? So
Yeah.
is the summer there also really bad at the moment? Is it super hot or?
It was pretty hot. It was we had lots of fires because of
Oh,
the dryness.
oh,
Yeah.
uh,
There's lots of smoke in the air. Couldn't even go outside a lot of the time. So
good.
yeah. Yeah.
Starting to become worrisome then.
Yeah. So let's get into music. So your newest album, Convergence, will be released on November 10th. It's
Right.
beautiful that you dedicated this album to your mother. I am
Thank you.
sorry for your loss there. Um, I'm glad you had a supportive mother, though. That's awesome.
Exactly,
Yeah.
me too. Like, it really is. It was a terrible time. It was a short, terrible time because between the time that she got diagnosed with a brain tumor and her death, it was only 4 months, and it was shortly after both my brother and I received our firstborn, and
Wow. Yeah.
she always wanted to be a grandma, and then finally she got that. And it was like she became 20 years younger as soon as those children were born.
Mm.
And then suddenly she became so ill and she lost it all immediately again. And
Mm. That's
that
very difficult.
was harsh. That was harsh. But I agree with you. It's the fact that she was there for not just me, but everyone her entire life. She was a mom. Everyone who needed a mom,
Wow.
she's there for
Yeah.
them. And it's just fantastic. And I feel absolutely blessed to have had her in my life. And pretty sure I would have become a completely different person if it weren't for someone as great a guiding light as she was.
That's right. I was reading about how there's always a supportive person. Like when people are having struggles, if there's a supportive person in their life, they do so much better. And
Absolutely.
I just recognized that my aunt was my supportive person, and I thanked her just recently because it's so it means so much, like how it could have been without that person. So
Yeah, at least you had that blessing in your life. Did your aunt also pass away recently, or
well, we just found out she has cancer, but
I'm
yeah,
so sorry.
yeah. But yeah,
It's. I hope that other people will like the situation that you're in right now with your aunt. I hope this also does something for you. Then it's
yeah,
dedicated to my mom, of course, but in a way, it's dedicated to everyone's
right.
sick or dying loved person, right?
Absolutely. Death has like it touches everybody. Everybody's going to die, and I know it had a profound touch in my life. I've had a lot of death in my life. So
I'm sorry.
yeah. So that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Just not really a question, but just like opening up a conversation. So I like that you took this topic to music because I mean it affects all of us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Very emotional, and also it's a factual and emotional topic, and it's not going to be. No one's going to be spared of this topic. Sooner or later, it's going to be in your life, and it's going to be front and center.
yeah,
With that said, it's also it's not an unnatural topic. Of course, death is as much part of life as life is part of death. But I think most of us try to avoid thinking about it and just pretending that it's still far away
yeah.
until it's suddenly in front of your door and comes knocking, and you can't do anything but open that door. And that's I think that's a pretty terrifying thought.
Mm. I thought it was interesting how you took the perspective of the person who is dying, because we often we're selfish because we think of ourselves, right, and what we're going through, but what is the person going through too, right? It is a very interesting topic,
Exactly.
very intriguing. So
It's
yeah,
it's enigmatic, right? It's really interesting to know what happens with a person like that. The reason why I went with that is I used to work in healthcare, not for very long, but there were people that were, is it called palliative in English
Yes.
as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were people that were in the palliative state already, and I was one of the caretakers that helped them with everything.
Yeah.
And I tended to talk a lot to those people because that to me felt like the most important thing you could do. Like the entire cleaning and food and stuff like that. That's of course also important, but just being that person that's there at the bedside, that was more important to me. And they would tell me about these things that they were seeing, or these feelings that they were having, and they were often honestly quite beautiful, not very frightening. They tended to see golden lights moving across the room, or they had been talking to relatives that were long dead, like a lost child or a lost mom was standing at the bedside with them 24 hours a day. And if that's what's going to happen to us, that's not the worst thing in the world, is it? So it was honestly, I figured, you know what, maybe it's not so bad to be in that position. But those were all people that had accepted their deaths. And there were one or two people that had not, that were still struggling because they had worries in real life. They still had enemies that they didn't, what do you call it?
Yeah, feeling regret.
They wanted to solve stuff and they couldn't, and that really ate them up, and they went into death with their feet dragging, basically, and they really suffered. And that was...
Yeah.
That really made me realize death is not the thing that you should worry about, but the things in life that hold you back from dying. Those are the things that you really...
Because they seem to come to the forefront at that time. If you have the time. Sometimes it's all of a sudden, right? It's a very, very interesting topic for sure. And it's interesting that you're saying a lot of people were talking to you, because my experience hasn't been that way. It's been very shut off and people not talking. And I always wanted somebody to say something like, what's going on? Tell me what you're thinking. But yeah, very interesting. And it brings me to another question that I had, which was, I was going to ask you about Follow the River, the video, but you did such a great, behind the scenes about that, which was really, really good. So I think people should check that out. So very interesting, the way that you portrayed sort of like the dying of the brain, and I thought that was quite interesting.
Thank you. So it was a good start. I think that's the second track of the album. So it's really where the journey starts off, and it had to be it had to be a strong start. You had to feel that you were being dragged along by this river, and that you had very little choice but to go on. There's no way back. And I think Follow the River is probably one of my favorite openers. I know it's not the first track, but it is kind of the opener of the album. And in that regard, I was very happy with how that worked out, because it tells that story pretty well, in my opinion.
So there was also the other video that you did of the song "The Sea." Can you explain your vision behind the song and that video in particular?
Yeah, The Sea was a very personal one for me. The Sea, first of all, the album is dedicated to my mother, but The Sea specifically was written for her during the time that she was still alive, and we knew that she was going to die. I almost feel like I didn't write the song. The song just came, and it just happened, and it was written to be played on her funeral. And the vision behind it was, the story starts with the river that needs to be followed, and the river eventually, oftentimes, ends in a sea. And to me, that first of all, the concept of the river is of course not an ordinary river. It's a river of life and death, and it also contains fragments of people that were never born, things that never happened. And they all either go towards or flow from the sea. And the sea is, in that regard, to me personally, like you could call it the cosmic source, or just the source. Truth be told, I'm not 100% sure what it is, because to know that would be knowing the answer to life and death.
Yeah.
I also hope that it doesn't really matter what background someone is from. You can be an atheist, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Christian. Everyone has their own vision of what's going to happen after death.
Yeah.
But I think we all, to some degree, will return to a source where we originally came from. Whether we are aware of that or not, that's of course the big question. But I think that's what the sea is, this central source of everything.
Cool. Yeah. So this is the third of the trilogy of albums. So how does it feel to be completed?
Oh, it's a gigantic relief, to be honest.
Yeah.
We came up. I am a one-man band, but the previous two albums were with a bandmate, namely Skirge. And I joined up with him during high school, and we had this grandiose plan of, hey, we're going to make a trilogy. And high school kids, they think they got the world at the palm of their hands, so to say. Well, that was a little bit more complicated than we had expected, to be honest. Especially because at that point we were still going to get band members, we were going to get studios to record for us.
Yeah.
And one by one, all of those things got flagged, and was like, okay, I guess we'll just do this ourselves. We just do that ourselves. And I ended up doing most of it myself. He did the vocals and the lyrics, luckily. But I had to practice all of that stuff, all of the audio and all of the instruments, and that took over a decade. And even when the first album was done, I felt like we had this gigantic journey behind us already, and it was already so. It was very draining. Let's put it that way. It was great. I'm happy that we did that, but I did feel very drained. And then, of course, that went pretty well. That's something we didn't expect. So then we decided, you know what, we wanted to make a trilogy out of it. I guess we'll just have to put our money where our mouth is. That's what it's called, right? So that's what we did, and that again nearly took another 10 years. So to me, this is the end of a 20-year journey. Really, it's was intense, and I'm very happy that I was able to pull through.
And how is he doing?
He's doing fine at the moment. He had to take a step back because he moved to a different country after the second album was released, and it ended up completely draining him. He wanted to still be part of the band, but his motivations always came with waves. He would have 1 month where he was super motivated, a million ideas, and then he would have another month where he was just very down in the dumps, not really feeling anything. And that was never a problem because I'm the same way. We kind of just picked it up back and forth between each other.
Yeah.
But then when he moved to a different country and he was just so tired from that situation became a lasting problem. He had this down in the dumps feeling for nearly 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's why we decided to split. But I must say, I'm speaking to him daily. I'm still speaking to him daily, even if it's just text messages. And I think he just needs some time, and he'll be fine. I do believe in that.
Good. That's good. Again, it's good that you're being there for him too through it.
And he's for me as well. By the way, he's a big supporter of the band still, despite not being part of it. That's
good. So, was the guitar the first instrument you picked up in high school, or had you already been playing other instruments?
Guitar was the first real instrument for me, yes. Before that, I was not interested in music whatsoever. That is because I didn't really hear rock or metal all that much when I was growing up. I didn't really know that it existed, to be honest. There was some music that I liked as a kid, but not enough to really dig into it. And when I went to high school, and of course you start to hear stuff like punk bands and a little bit of metal, that's the moment that really opened my eyes, that made me realize, okay, this is super cool. I want this to be my life. And the sound of a guitar, that really did it for me. I loved the way it sounded, and I wanted it. I didn't even know what instrument it was, but I wanted it. And luckily, my parents, once again, very supportive as they are, decided to listen to me when I said, Mom, Dad, I want to play guitar. Despite them thinking that I hated music for most of my life, suddenly I won the guitar. I probably thought I would play it once and I would just dump it in a corner, but I didn't. I kept playing it. So yeah, guitar is my real and still my central instrument.
And so they didn't play any instruments or anything. You were like the first one in your household to
No, my brother. My brother was in a symphony orchestra, a local orchestra, and he played the trombone. Is it a trombone? Yeah. And he did so for many years. I think he did so since he was somewhere between 5 and 8 years old. So for a very long time, he was really the musician of the household. Which was cool, by the way, because when I started playing guitar, he also picked up a guitar to play together with me. And we would play stuff like Iron Maiden and Metallica together, which I still have fond memories of. But sometimes he also picked up his trombone to play together with the guitar. And that was a very weird combo, but it worked.
It's good to have someone to encourage you. Yeah.
And that's exactly why during the second album, there was one song that was a little bit more symphonic, The Chosen Path. And there's a tiny trombone solo of him on there. And that was specifically because I wanted to put the spotlight back on him for a moment for basically being my musical brother for all those years. He's my older brother, so I look up to him,
Yeah. So in terms of the trilogy of albums, did you know from the beginning what the topics were going to be, or did that come over and get shaped over time?
To a degree, yes. We always knew what we wanted to make music about. If you hear that sound, by the way, my cat is going deaf, so she's yelling very loudly the entire time.
My dog is like chewing so much on her food right now, so same kind of.
So you know what it's like.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was I answering again?
I'm sorry. It was about what the topics of the albums were? Was it shaped over time, or did you already know?
Yeah, we did already know to a certain degree, but it didn't take shape until those albums happened.
Yeah.
For example, the third album at first was going to be called Transcendence, but that's very, it almost sounds religious, more to a, how do you say? It's fine with me if people interpret the music from a religious standpoint, but I don't want to imply that it is supposed to be this angelic thing.
Yeah.
And that's why we kind of, or I tuned it down a little bit to be a more psychedelic topic. So the album titles were not decided, but we did know roughly the direction where we wanted to go. Namely, first album being more like earthly topics or feelings towards humanity, towards yourself. Second album being more like the time and space conundrum and finding your place in that. And the third album, The Journey of Death, was probably unavoidable. That seemed to me like the only logical conclusion of the journey.
Yeah. So, so you have schizoaffective disorder. I know you've been open about that. And yes. It seems like it has a direct effect on your energy, since there's times when you're shut down and times when you're more full of life and ideas. And you've learned to work with this, but can you explain how the composition process goes with all things considered?
So I have to split it up in three parts because there is because of the schizoaffective disorder, there's the peak, the mania, and there's the more normal state, and then there's a depression. And I can only do specific things during specific stages of that curve. So during the mania, I'm kind of just writing like a machine. I'm getting so many ideas that I have to just type and write and hum things into my phone. So I will just create this pile of content. It's very unfiltered. And that's exactly where the problem with that lies. It could be that there's some complete gold nuggets in there, but 80-90% of it is probably just complete manic. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
And it's also written from a perspective where everything suddenly makes sense to me. You have all these brilliant insights, and you suddenly understand how the world works, how death works, how life works. Suddenly you get all of it. And then when you come down from that and you read those notes back, you have absolutely no idea what it says. It's just like, what the hell did I write down here? This makes no sense whatsoever. So during that phase, that intermediate phase, so to say, that's when I really just throw away everything that I don't need, cut away everything that's not useful, and try to filter it down. And maybe that those few nuggets that you find, those I put somewhere and go like, hey, I can work with this. That's also usually the phase where the outline for an album is made, because I don't write albums as a collection of songs. I really write them with certain stages, and the stages get filled in with songs, so to say. Yeah. So I may get the idea of the album from the manic phase, but I have to condense it into usable steps in the normal phase. And that's also when most of the productive writing and production happens, because I cannot produce music while I'm depressive, and I also cannot produce music while I'm manic, because I just don't get anything done in that regard.
Right.
So that's the normal phase. That's the most useful one, I would say. Then comes the depressive phase, and in the depressive phase, I find it nigh unbearable to touch any instrument. Everything I do just sounds absolutely horrible to me. And I'm pretty convinced that I should just stop making music and never touch an instrument again. It's really that bad. The good thing is, over the years, I've conditioned myself to know that this goes away eventually. It just usually takes 2 to 3 months. So it's a pretty long time. Yeah. And since it takes so long, I don't want to waste that time. I still want to do something, or else the albums are going to take 10 years again. So I tend to do the jobs that I hate doing anyway in that time, like editing music, that kind of stuff, really. Editing, and I can't think of anything else for a moment for some reason now. But generally, the boring, non-creative tasks, they need to be done anyway. I would hate doing them anyway, so I might as well do them when I'm already feeling bad, because what's going to happen? Am I going to feel worse? Yeah. So you do the bad stuff during the bad times and the good stuff during the good times. That's the solution for me.
You sound very motivated, because even myself, I've been trying to learn guitar for years, and I have like an attention deficit problem. So I just keep losing the interest, and then going back, and then losing the interest. So yeah, it's like a cycle. Sorry.
That seems really, really terrible to me. I must say, like, I'm of, how do you say it? I am convinced that everyone can learn anything, but I can see how that would definitely be a problem. Let's put it that way. That doesn't make it easier for you.
But I guess there's also the piece of like having talent, right? Like obviously you have talent, and
I personally don't believe, but no? I'm not a believer in talent. No.
Okay, that's funny.
I very much believe that there's like a linear line between input and output. So
right.
And
what you put in comes out. Like you put your work into it, and then
more or less, yes. Like I can of course not deny that there are certain factors that can help someone, like for example your personality, and like you said, if you have a disorder which really makes it harder for you, then I can see how that would block you from making the first steps easier. But I do believe that if you can find a way to deal with that, struggling to find the words right now, sorry, but like I just told you, I also have these challenges, and I found a way to break through them, which makes it possible for me to do it. I'm convinced that if I didn't have these challenges, I would probably be producing an album every year. So that's why I say I'm not really a believer of the talent, because I think the word talent can make that you believe that you can't do it, and that's something that I want to avoid.
That's true.
That's like the message that I want to.
Yeah.
I believe you can learn to play guitar for sure. It may take a little bit longer to get started because you have this barrier, but as soon as you start enjoying it, you will never want to stop anymore. It's a thing. It feels good to be good at something. So.
So based on what you've just been saying, I was going to ask you, you said before sometimes it feels like you have one foot in this world and one foot in another world. I was going to ask you which world is music in, but it seems like it's in both, maybe, right?
It is. Yeah, you picked up well on that. Thank you for getting that from that. I can't even remember when I said that. Was that the interview with the guy who? That was a good video. But you are correct. It comes originally from that other world, and then it gets translated into this one. mostly. Sometimes it's just jamming in this world, but I feel like the background to a lot of the music and the inspiration is very very dreamy, I guess you could call it. It is not really based on perfectly normal logic. And also, while the story is building in my head, if I would write it down and show it to someone, they would probably think I'm insane. Maybe rightfully so. I don't know. But it doesn't really make sense in that regard. It's very similar to when you have a dream, and you wake up and you write it down quickly, it
Yeah.
makes sense. But when you read it half a day later, it starts to disintegrate. You don't really understand your logic anymore.
Yeah.
And this music kind of comes from a place like that. And it's probably not 100% the same anymore, because the way that I heard it in the dream or in the let's call it a psychotic phase, it's not exactly the same as it was in that world. But I do try to interpret it as best as I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask you a little more about that. So, because I remember you saying that you do hear music in your dreams sometimes. And I wondered, is it actual melodies and arrangements, or is it more the emotion and visuals? Do you have control? Because I know for me, I have lots of vivid dreams and stuff. But when I wake up, sometimes I only remember the emotion of it, or like the upset, or it's very strong, but I don't remember the details, like.
Before I answer that, I want to ask you, do you record your dreams? Because if you have, I think there's something to be had there. I think that the dream is very interesting. And I've been doing, for that reason, I've been doing that as well. I also have very strong, vivid dreams, obviously. And I try to write down as many of them as I can. So after a while, when you read them back, you start to find patterns in your own dreams. And you become so good at recognizing your own patterns that as you get into those dreams, first of all, you find them easier to remember. And second of all, because you recognize the patterns, you will have many more lucid dreams. I don't know if you ever had a lucid dream.
No.
And really control.
Oh, yes, where you can control, yes.
That's really awesome, right? So when you have that, I think some of the most beautiful things in life can be seen in a lucid dream. And doing that thing can help you have them more often. But to answer your question, I don't always control them, no. Oftentimes they really are melodies, not just melodies, but an entire orchestra. I can hear everything. I can hear the entire song playing as if I'm listening to the radio, and it's completely mixed and everything, which is the problem, because as soon as I wake up, I somehow have to manage to record all of that within the 10 seconds that you have to really write something down like that before you just start losing the notes one after the other. So I have a vast collection of phone recordings of me just humming with a broken voice going on, trying to somehow capture what I hear, like the melody, the beat, what was the guitar doing, what was the vocal sounding like. That's usually what happens, and I have no control over those. They just happen. But there have been moments where I was lucid, and I kind of challenged the dream to kind of like show me what you got. Okay. And one recurring pattern for me in my dreams is when I look at the stars, they start to shift and make patterns, or there's like a spaceship battle. There's like a million tiny spaceships in the sky. There's always something happening with the stars, basically. Yeah. So at some point I was lucid and I wanted to just really see what it can do. So I said, okay, show me what you got. And I looked into the sky and I saw the stars and they started shifting. Okay, I had seen that before. Yeah. And I kind of just let the dream know, I am not impressed. I've seen you do better. This cannot be all of it, right? Yeah. And that was really the right thing to say, because for some, how do you even say it? Beautiful pictures started appearing in the stars. Like, imagine the most brilliant things that humankind has ever made. They just kept popping into the stars and they shifted every second into a new one. And it was the most mind-blowing thing that I've ever seen. And as that was happening, a melody started rising up. It wasn't even a guitar melody. It was just a melody of an unknown instrument. And that melody I ended up recording for some album. In any case, I just could not believe the beauty that I was witnessing. And even while it was happening, I realized this is coming from my brain right now. This is happening in my head.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can believe that, because this is just, it's too beautiful.
Yeah.
It's too great. And even while I was in my dream, I had like, I almost had a religious breakdown right there and then. I was like, this is being channeled to me right now. This cannot possibly be one human brain creating this. It's just too beautiful. Yeah. And that's from one dream. So
yeah, dreams would be amazing for sure.
Dreams are beautiful. Dreams are amazing, and they should never be underestimated. Yeah. Did I even answer your question with that? I don't know. I kind of went off.
You did. I find it very interesting. Like, yeah, pretty neat.
If I go on too many tangents, let me know, because I tend to do that, I think.
So where did you find Ming from Void Visuals, who's done the videos and the artwork for the album? How did he come?
We lived in the same household for a while, and I was already with my then it was my girlfriend, now it is my wife, and we were living in that house, and he was there too. And he was a visual artist. He was always painting, and he also made documentaries and stuff like that. He was doing film school at the time. Mm-hmm. And I always just liked what he was making, and though we kind of lived parallel to each other, we did not have a lot of contact back then. Well, it was more or less a community that we lived in back then. There was a lot of mutual respect, and I was learning audio at the time, and he was learning video at the time, and in that way we kind of got interested into each other's work. So at some point we just decided, hey, you know what, maybe we should do something together. And we did a couple of documentaries. I mixed a couple of his songs, stuff like that. And we noticed, okay, this works really well. We're a very good team. Yeah. But that was late teenage years for us. And at some point you realize, okay, we actually have to make some money now, so we should actually do something with that. So we decided to get a little bit of a you scratch my back, I scratch yours deal going between the two of us. He pays for my work, I pay for his work. But ever since, he has been on board to create all of the art and all of the visuals for Shylmagoghnar, because it's just a very easy collaboration. And by now, I can truly call him a friend of mine. That's a
nice friend to have. That's good. Yeah,
it is very nice, a very good friendship to have. Absolutely.
Yeah, I noticed too with the videos how there was a color palette for there was like blues in the one, and then like the grays in that. I thought that was cool.
Exactly. That's very him.
Yeah.
Also, the mirrored image thing that he was doing, that was 100% his idea.
Yeah.
He likes doing these fractal shapes and zooms and stuff like that. He's a pretty spiritual person. He's quite unlike me in many regards, but that makes the collaboration all the more fun.
Yeah.
And I absolutely let him do his thing. I think every artist should have his own input. After all, if I didn't like his work, why would I hire him, right? So
yeah, that makes sense.
That's how we do it.
I was going to ask you what mood or emotion would describe this album about death itself, but then I thought there can't be one to describe it. I mean, how can you describe the end of life, right? Like,
I think that's correct. I think it goes through all of the emotions and emotions. I wouldn't say that it specifically goes through the stages of grief. I didn't do that on purpose. At least maybe it does. I should actually check that. But there are moments of hope on the album. There are also moments of struggle and moments of fear. Very mixed bag of emotions. It ends of course in the sweet release and being able to let go of things without pain, because that's kind of how I imagine the best kind of death would be. But it's definitely not only positivity. Let's put it that way. There's a literal monster that tries to eat the protagonist at some point, who preys upon the travelers that are going through these realms. So to say, it's kind of there, and it tries to pretend to be some kind of godly figure, so it can envelop them and slowly eat them. That's another thing that happens, and that's completely the opposite of the sea. And you have to pass that to be able to get through to the sea, and so it's pretty varying. Yeah,
that makes sense too. So was there a song that was extra challenging for you to complete?
Wait, sorry, which song was the most challenging?
Was there a song that was extra challenging?
Um, mm, I think all of them had spots that I really struggled with the exception of the sea. The sea road itself. Um, yeah, follow the river. The lyrics were. I would not say that they were challenging technically, but I was writing them as the entire situation with my mom was happening, and they just really hurt. And recording it was a very painful ordeal. I was really down in the dumps on that day. I was just so sad, and I had just visited her, and she was just really, as moms are, she was pretending to be all right and really doing her best to be kind and blah. And I was like, Mom, you can drop the act. I know that you're very sick. Just please
Yeah.
try to hide it from me. It's okay. You can't help it. We're not going to be disappointed in you for suffering from cancer. That
No.
who would do that, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, when I came back from that, I felt such built up sadness and pain that I decided to just record those lyrics then and there right away. Particularly the ending of the song, that entire bit. All that remains is to follow the river. That entire part. So that one is really filled with that pain, and I think that was particularly tough for me.
Can you tell me about a piece of artwork that's not music, that's dear to you, whether it's on your wall, skin, or something you own?
I don't own it, but the Scream by Edward Munch is probably my favorite artwork of all time. I think that's the perfect encapsulation of anxiety, of having that moment where your world shatters around you, and you feel like you're being torn into a different dimension. It practically looks like a different dimension around him. But what I like about it is there's people on the bridge behind him, and they probably don't notice a thing. To them, he's just this guy standing there, just breathing slightly louder than normally, probably. And that's always the horror about this kind of stuff, right? About panic attacks, psychosis, things like that. You are completely losing yourself. Your reality is disintegrating, but to everyone around you, it's completely unnoticeable. And I think he's the one person that really managed to capture that in a single image. And yeah, that's my favorite.
I'm gonna have to look at that again because I have seen it obviously, but to see the details there, yeah.
It's a pretty old one. There's like 100 versions of it. I guess he really wanted to make it perfect, but I think his first version of it is still the one that I feel the most.
I will find that for sure. So I'm just going to say two words, and out of the two, or they're not words, but two things. And out of the two, what's your first reaction on which one you would pick? So, Brussels sprouts or beets?
Brussels sprouts.
Okay. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Salty or sweet?
Sweet.
Halloween or Christmas?
Christmas.
Book or movie?
Book.
Flight or flight?
Fight or flight?
Yeah.
Fight.
Well, it was great to talk to you, and thanks for.
It's great to talk to you too. Thank you very much. This was very nice.
All the best to you with all you're doing, and yeah.
Same to you. Care. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, you too.